I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. The judge presiding over New York Attorney General Letitia James' civil fraud lawsuit against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and his adult children has just issued an order which spells big trouble for all of those Trump defendants. Judge Arthur Engoron just issued an order requiring all of those individuals and all of the Trump-related entities to file compliance affidavits by May 15th of 2023, stating under penalty of perjury all of the steps that they've taken to comply with their discovery obligations and produce all of the responsive information, documents, communications, and records that have been requested of them by New York Attorney General Letitia James in this case. Now, Justice Arthur Engoron, the presiding judge in this case, is a no-nonsense judge. You may recall that prior to New York Attorney General Letitia James filing this civil fraud lawsuit back in 2022 in September, remember, this lawsuit's the one that's seeking at least $250 million in damages against Donald Trump, his adult children, and the Trump Organization, as well as injunctive relief, effectively stopping them from doing business in New York. Well, before that lawsuit was even filed in September of 2022, Justice Arthur Engoron had sanctioned Donald Trump for contempt of court, essentially $10,000 fine per day in relation to the special proceeding. So before the lawsuit is filed by the New York Attorney General, there was this investigative period under the New York Attorney General statute in New York, and that's called a special proceeding. And when Donald Trump failed to comply, then Justice Arthur Engoron says, I'm not allowing this nonsense in my court. I'm finding you in contempt. It was $10,000 a day. Donald Trump finally went into compliance there, but had to pay $100,000+ in sanctions for his failure to comply with the court's orders and with the discovery obligations in this case. So here, now the case has been filed. The case was filed in September of 2022. Now we are in May. Donald Trump apparently is not turning over all of the records he's supposed to, nor is his adult children and the Trump Organization. Back on April 25th of this year, Letitia James, New York Attorney General, sends Justice Arthur Engoron a letter calling out Donald Trump, his adult children, the Trump Organization, for their failure to produce discovery, for their failure to preserve records. So in response to that, Justice Arthur Engoron issued this order, and this order is a very serious order that if Donald Trump and his adult children and the Trump Organization don't comply with, they're going to be in big trouble. I'm talking likely of another contempt order, which could have not just serious monetary ramifications, but it could even go further than that. And in a case like this as well, if a sanction is an adverse inference against a party that is concealing information, it could be one of the ways a jury could essentially find their liability in this bet the company case that where hundreds of millions of dollars are on the line. So let's jump into this order that was just issued by Justice Arthur Engoron. Here's what he says. It is hereby ordered that the preliminary conference order entered November 22nd, 2022, as modified by the order entered March 27th, 2023, is further modified as follows. So these are just scheduling orders, and all that means is that they're modifying the scheduling orders to add new dates and change some of the previous dates. 1. The deadline to complete all outstanding document production is extended to May 12th, 2023. So the judge is giving a little bit more time for the parties to produce records in connection with the case. However, 2, by May 15th, 2023, each entity defendant, collectively the Trump Organization, shall submit a compliance affidavit setting forth 1, the name of every custodian in possession of information responsive to any discovery notice issued by the Office of the Attorney General. Just so you know, when you hear that term custodian here, just think employee. What a custodian means in the world of electronic discovery and litigation, it just means someone who possesses information or documents or records or communications like emails and things like that may be responsive to discovery requests. So Donald Trump is a custodian, and Eric Trump is a custodian, and Don Jr. and Ivanka and all of the other employees who may have information that has been requested by the New York Attorney General's office in their discovery request. Those are examples of custodians who, according to this order, that the defendant must submit a compliance affidavit setting forth the name of all of those custodians. Okay, number 2. Every device used by each custodian for the conduct of business on behalf of the Trump organization. 3, every email address, telephone number, or other electronic account used for communications concerning the business of the Trump organization. 4, whether each of the devices and accounts identified in items 2.2 and 2.3 were collected and searched for responsive documents. 5, what search terms or other means were used to conduct any search of the devices and accounts identified in items 2.2 and 2.3, and 6, if any devices or accounts identified in items 2.2 and 2.3 were not retained or searched, what efforts were undertaken to preserve or locate those devices or accounts. So what this request basically means is any of the Trump organization defendants, so all of those Trump-related LLCs that are defendants in this case, set forth the names of every person who works for the organization that may have information that was responsive to the requests that were issued by the New York Attorney General asking for documents and emails and text messages. By the way, we want to go back all the way to 2011. That's how far the Trump organization has to go back here. Then for all of those individuals, then list every device they've used. So going back to 2011, did they use iPhones, Samsungs, Blackberries, whatever devices that they've used? Do they have laptops? Did they have desktops? And then what were their email addresses? What were their, any other identifying thing that they had to gain information? What did they use to communicate with people? Did they use encrypted apps, for example? But list everything. And then if those devices have been destroyed or don't exist, why? And what have you done to search for them? And go back, by the way, to 2011. So a significant period of time that they are asking for there. By May 15th, 2023, each individual defendant shall submit a compliance affidavit detailing 1, every device used for communications with or on behalf of the Trump organization or concerning the business of the Trump organization during the period 2011 to the present. 2, every email address, telephone number, or other electronic account used for the communications with the Trump organization or concerning the business of the Trump organization during the period 2011 to the present. 3, whether each of the devices and accounts identified in items 3.1 and 3.2 were searched for responsive documents. 4, what search terms or other means were used to conduct any search of the devices and accounts identified in items 3.1 and 3.2, and 5, if any devices or accounts identified in items 3.1 and 3.2 were not retained or searched, what efforts were undertaken to preserve or locate those devices or accounts. So Donald Trump, Don Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Weisselberg, list every one of your devices, list all of your email addresses. We're going back to we're going back to 2011. We want to know all of your email addresses, every cell phone number you've ever had, any device, any app that you use to communicate, and what have you done to search all of that and turn it over to the New York Attorney General's office. 4, the deadline to take deposition testimony from witnesses properly noticed before the previous fact discovery deadline of April 30th, 2023 is extended to May 12th, 2023. No party is permitted to issue new subpoenas or deposition notices. All parties shall identify the expert witnesses they will call at trial on or before May 19, 2023. All parties shall produce their expert witness reports on or before May 26, 2023. All parties shall identify any rebuttal experts on or before June 5th, 2023. All of the other deadlines set forth in the court's prior order remain operative. So that is the order by Justice Arthur Engoron. And then that was preceded by this letter that was sent by New York Attorney General Letitia James. It's a 3-page letter. I'll just give you the quick highlights of it, where Letitia James' office states, "Dear Justice Engoron, the Office of the Attorney General writes to seek court resolution of an issue necessitated by the upcoming close of fact discovery on April 30th, 2023. OAG, the Office of Attorney General, believes this proposed order is necessary, given defendants' failure to preserve, collect, and produce documents and materials in a timely and transparent fashion. While we have recently begun receiving documents responsive to our discovery demands, defendants have provided no timeline for the completion of their production, and more concerningly, have not answered questions about the custodians, sources, and means used to undertake their production. For months, the Office of Attorney General has been seeking an explanation for gaps in the production by the Trump Organization, and many of these issues date back to the underlying investigation, and they're reminding Justice Arthur Engoron, remember the underlying investigation before we filed where you held Donald Trump and the Trump Organization in contempt? And so in response to that letter, Justice Arthur Engoron issued the order that I had read to you before, which is so interesting about these MAGA Republicans in general. When they step into the courtroom, they just completely crumble, because where facts actually matter, and specifically facts that are facts backed by evidence, all they know is crime. All they know is cover up. All they know is how to not be transparent. Remember the report I did recently on Rudy Giuliani and his failures to produce discovery in connection with the defamation lawsuit brought by Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, the Georgia election workers who he defamed? He hasn't produced discovery there either. That's a federal case. And that's in Washington, D.C. federal court. And what Rudy Giuliani argued there, and let me just read for you just this one portion of Giuliani's declaration. He goes, "The documents that have been archived, because I have endured fees and costs in connection with all of the multiple litigations and investigations, I could no longer afford to pay." It's a company called Trust Point One that stores all of his documents. "I can no longer afford to pay them to keep the documents online." He claims it would cost him over $320,000 to become current on his arrearage with the company that stored all of his electronic documents. And he says, therefore, he doesn't have the means to pay and he can't participate in discovery. So that's happening in Washington, D.C. federal court. When I started this video talking about what's going on in New York State court with Donald Trump and Ivanka and Don Jr. and all of the Trump-related defendant entities in that case. But here's the one thing I'll say, and I'll leave you with this about the New York State case. Come hell or high water, as Justice Arthur Engoron said, this case, it is etched in stone. It's going to trial October 2nd, 2023. So all of these games that Trump plays and trying to hide documents and not participate, the judge is running a tight ship here. He knows what Trump's up to. He knows what Trump's kids are up to, and he's not having it. And so, folks, buckle up. Things are going to get interesting. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your incredible support. Hit subscribe. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We got a lot of great content on our Patreon. Wherever you get your audio podcasts, subscribe for free to the MeidasTouch podcast and hit subscribe here on our YouTube channel. It is free. Have a great day.
Love this video? Then you'll love the MeidasTouch podcast. Listen as my brothers and I break down the latest news and chat with top political leaders on the fastest growing pro-democracy podcast in the world. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Friday. Add the MeidasTouch podcast right now wherever you listen to your podcasts.